His name is Greg Wrubell. He is the voice of the Cougars, and he is on BYU Sports Nation. What is up, Greg? I miss the hair, I'll be honest.
I miss the mustache.
We all have less hair today than we did last night.
That's a great point.
This is true. What was your favorite part about the Halloween Spooktacular last night? Because mine was you as Ron Burgundy.
Mine was getting to be somebody else for an hour. Yeah. You know, at some point you say, if we're going to stay in character, let's just go with it and see what happens.
Yes.
And live or die. And hopefully it was the former. But, yeah, it was a blast. Good time.
When did you realize, you know what? I've just got to do this. If I'm going to go, I'm going to go. Because you stated, Spencer and I weren't in character the whole time, but you were, which I rather enjoyed.
I think when I got the first reaction from Kalani on the first question I asked as Ron, I figured let's just go with it. see if I can keep the voice a little bit lower than it normally is, and see how it goes. Yeah, it was fun. It's again, I wasn't the best Ron Burgundy in the world. Will Ferrell is Will Ferrell for a reason. But, yeah, I felt I stuck with it for the most part.
Look at that. Just on BYUtv, we're showing you as Ron Burgundy. We're showing Mo Longy as Biggie, as Biggie Smalls. Like, this is an amazing visual.
That was a great moment. It really was. You know, that's on my demo reel, that's going on there.
Yeah.
I don't have a demo reel.
Yeah.
But if I ever have one, it's going on there. Yeah. When I go job hunting, that's going to go
You're
on
like,
there.
hey, just know that I'm versatile. Yeah.
All right, so we've got basketball. We'll get to the basketball in a second.
Yeah.
BYU football is a 15-point underdog to Fresno State. Why or why not do you think that is a fair take from the folks in Vegas?
Well, Fresno is a very good defensive football team, and they are, a few wins better than BYU at this point. It's to be expected. BYU to this point probably merits that kind of line. They're a favorite for a lot of good reasons. Good football team. They didn't play their best against UNLV. It was kind of an odd one to see at that point, but that does say they're gettable, right? If UNLV can go in there, UNLV hadn't won in Fresno ever. I think
It's like
in a long time. It's been a long,
something.
long time. So the fact they got that, it proves a little bit of vulnerability. Again, we add the word ability. No, it shows a vulnerability for Fresno State, but they're favorites for good reasons. Really fine football team. Ed Lamb the other day told me he thinks they're the best team top to bottom. BYU will see the rest of the way and not by a close margin. And so there are a lot of reasons to be impressed by them. Among the things they do really, really well is keep that backfield clean. The quarterback rarely gets touched. They've allowed 6 sacks in 8 games. So disruption is hard. You can't really disrupt the Fresno State backfield. McMarion is a very efficient passer and can run around really well, and you just don't disrupt too much in their backfield. So negative yard plays are very rare for this Fresno State team.
The offense ability of BYU
I'm not sure about that one.
Came out Saturday. So the question is, was that a breakout for BYU, and will we see more of that, or will BYU revert to its old ways? It's a tough matchup against a good defensive team who's pitched 2 shutouts. San Diego State only scored 3. So how do you think things play out for the first time for BYU since '98 in Fresno?
Well, I think we see a turn it loose Cougar team that we've seen really the back half of the ECU game, and of course the entire San Jose State game. And why not at this point? Just let her rip. We saw a lot of first down throws from Ty Detmer in the offense this past weekend. BYU's had Tanner Mangum at back-to-back 300-yard games, when he hadn't had any 300-yard games against FBS in the first, or BYU hadn't since Ty had come on board. Now back-to-back weeks. Again, vulnerable defenses and generous defenses, but that said, they actually were able to complete a lot of passes and many downfield as well. So, yeah, I say just let her rip. Nothing to lose at this point, and why not just give it a go with that aggressive mindset we saw last week.
That's what I wanted to ask you about in terms of the aggressive mindset. I mean, it went beyond just being aggressive, because I think Ty Detmer and the coaches have called – the play calling has been aggressive. It's been the execution of the aggressive play calling. Can that continue this week, do you think?
Well, that's going to be the objective. Fresno State's defense is pretty good at disrupting, but Ty Detmer at this point and Tanner Mangum, I think they know who to go to. They've got their playmakers right now kind of identified, and those guys have proven the ability to make plays. Tanner needs to be just a tad more consistent on the easier throws. But, the tougher, more long-distance throws, I don't think there's too many they missed on last week against San Jose State. And it was a pass efficiency day for BYU that was right around 150. They haven't been there for a long time. They're at 149.4, I think, last week. You can win a lot of games at that number. In fact, if we want to identify a stat, maybe not the stat that matters for this week, but
a stat that doesn't matter?
A stat that matters a bit. Matters somewhat, but not enough to be a graphic.
Matterability?
So they were 149.4 100.4 in pass efficiency last week. When they get to 150, they've won 33 straight games at that number. And so they're very close to it last week. And if you're there, you're going to win a ton of games. And Fresno State's quarterback is almost right there as well for his season. So he's been very efficient on the year.
And keep in mind that that Marcus, what's his last name? McMarion. He was at Oregon State in 2015 with one Kalani Sitake and Elias Tuiaki. So some familiarity there.
Yeah.
So that stat mattered a bit. What is a stat that matters?
Well, the Braden El-Bakri hit last week was big, not just because it stopped us all in our tracks and caused the oohs and ahs around the stadium and got the sideline fired up and all those things.
And a Boney Fuller tweet.
It created a short field on which BYU scored a touchdown 2 plays later. That made it 14-0. BYU, as a front runner, is an excellent football team. Now, most teams will say, yeah, we like to play with the lead, but BYU is exceptional with the lead. If they can get to halftime with the lead, they've won 13 straight games, and going back to 2005, their win rate is 90%, just with a halftime lead. So getting up 14-zip, keeping the cushion toward the interval is huge for BYU, and huger for BYU than most teams. That 90% win rate is exceptional if they can just play a solid first 30 and play with that lead coming into the third quarter. And Kalani hasn't lost a game yet with a halftime lead. He's only had 8 halftime leads, but 8-0 is 8-0. And so the early lead, the El-Bakri hit, the short field, the TD, all played into BYU doing what it does very well, and that is being a front runner.
All right, let's switch gears, talk a little BYU basketball. The Cougars got a nice exhibition win last Friday at the Pit against New Mexico, all for charity, which was really cool. Any takeaways from that? Were there any surprises in that game that you saw or listened to?
Well, I won't say I'm surprised as much as I'm impressed by what I'm going to share. And first of all, anytime you win at the Pit, whether it's October, February, March, it's a good win. Winning at the Pit is always good. And so you take it whenever it comes against whatever kind of team they've got and whatever time of year it is. Winning at New Mexico means something, and that's good for this team. I was impressed by the fact that number 23 in the turnover tally didn't kill BYU. BYU had more points off of turnovers than New Mexico did on half the number of turnovers. You see what New Mexico did. They had 12 takeaways, or BYU had 12 takeaways. BYU scored more points, 18, off of turnovers than New Mexico did off of 23 giveaways, 17 points. And so the turnover number like that's going to kill you most games. But it didn't because BYU defended. They didn't give up the play after giving the ball away. They had a similar turnover against UT Arlington last year in the NIT. In fact, BYU had only 20 turnovers. But the Mavericks scored 30-plus points off of turnovers. When they gave the ball away, they gave the play away and kind of gave the game away. But against New Mexico in the Pit, the turnovers didn't kill them. That's a great sign. It's a full-court press, all 40, so they were frazzled at times. Yes, they gave the ball away at times, but they didn't give up on the play once they gave it away. They defended hard. Lobo's under 40% field goal, and BYU found a way to win despite that number. When you turn it over on about a third of your possessions, and that's what BYU did, it's tough to win, but they found a way to win by grinding it out, defensive mindset, very tough, stayed with it, found a way. I love it.
And I love that BYU had a quality exhibition game. Like, BYU should win tonight, against Westminster, but yeah, playing New Mexico, winning in the Pit, that is awesome. So what are you most excited to see tonight in another exhibition for BYU, this time at home?
Yeah, the development of those 7-8 that they're really going to count on once this thing gets going. And Jashir Hardnett becomes kind of like a Cougar tip-off and one exhibition is all we've seen. But he's got a good resume behind him coming in, and he shows he's the real deal. He is legit. I love Jashir Hardnett.
What do you love about him?
I love the fact that he's tough, he's stocky, a driver, a finisher, a defender, a three-point shooter, but not by volume, and 10 assists, 0 turnovers. This is what I really love through 2 exhibitions. How can you not like that line? And I'm just excited to see how deeply he's integrated into this lineup, how much Dave Rose asks him to do, how early, and the fact that you can throw a Jashir, a TJ Haws, and an Elijah Bryant on the court and say one of these guys is going to bring it up. But you don't need to even know who on any given play.
It could be Yoli Childs off the rebound. It's different.
Yoli has enough game where he could be. No matter who is asked to do something on this team right now, they appear to be almost qualified to do it.
And Luke Worthington has scored, in the Cougar tip-off in double figures in both games. This is kind of a new look Luke as well.
Yeah, he goes to the Pit and is almost perfect. 4 of 5 from the field, 4 of 4 from the free throw line. Really good defender. I'll say underrated defender. I think BYU really likes what they get from Luke in the post as a defender. And he's not going to be fed every possession like Eric Mika was, but he'll do with what he's given, I think, good things. And if you start Luke Worthington at center today, I say go for it. Yeah.
Which player that we're not talking about right now do you think we will be, say, in 2 months?
Dalton Nixon. I think Dalton Nixon will find himself in that top 7-8 and prove himself to be a very worthwhile part of this team this year. Something to watch. He's yet to miss a free throw in a BYU uniform. He was 13 for 13 as a freshman, and he has, of course, made all of his free throws in a couple of exhibitions. It'll end at some point, but that's a good thing to have from a guy. You know, you put him at the line, and he can make those. And he just looks better.
Yes.
And you know, you expect that, you know, from freshman to sophomore. But those 2 years in between always leave you wondering how soon does he pick it back up. It appears very quickly, and I'm excited to see what Dalton brings to BYU this year.
BYU in Westminster tonight, 9 Eastern Time, BYUtv, BYU Radio, pregame coverage on the radio at 8 Eastern Time. Heath Stroyer, the question we were asking last week before the Cougar tip-off, okay, what will it look like on the court? The new scheme, the new energy. What have you taken away from the first 2 games as to what BYU does differently on offense and defense?
Well, we were expecting a little longer possession time, perhaps. Now, that really didn't show itself yet. At the pit, that was an 83-possession game. And BYU's average clock time, I think, was 15 seconds. They were at 14 last year, so maybe 1 second slower. Not much of a difference there at all.
It felt different, though.
But it was the pace of the game. Again, you're pressed for 40 minutes. I think had BYU not been pressed, you would have seen a little more deliberate game, fewer possessions. 83 is largely a result of the tempo that they played with because of New Mexico's defensive approach. But I think just the fact that the Lobos shot 37.1% on the night is perhaps an indication of where this team might be under Heath and the new approach. And again, it's way too early to tell through a Cougar tip-off and one exhibition on the road. But I think as long as the players are buying into what the coaches are teaching, and it appears that they are, that's as important as anything. And I think long-term, offensively, defensively, the schemes will wait a little longer before making judgments. But I think the players are all believing that's what they can be this year, and that's important.
Greg, it's that time again. It's the segment that's sweeping North America. What do you have for us today with a cool thing about Canada?
Well, we are 1 day into November now, but the World Series does finish tonight, Game 7, Dodgers and Astros. And the World Series is an October tradition, and when you have a nickname associated with something like Mr. October, Reggie Jackson. Yes. When you're Mr. Anything, you're something. And we're talking about Mr. Hockey today. Mr. Hockey is the great Gordie Howe, who passed away last year at the age of 88. And there he is as a young lad with the Detroit Red Wings. Here's the thing about Gordie Howe, maybe not a lot of people know. He played in 5 different decades: the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. He was an NHL player in the 40s and an NHL player in the 80s. When he finished up with the Hartford Whalers, he was 52 years old. I turned 50 a couple months ago. Ty Detmer turned 50 this week. Ty's quarterback days are long since gone, but at 52, Gordie Howe was playing for the Hartford Whalers of the NHL. Not just playing, he had 15 goals in his final season. He had 15 goals and 26 assists as a 51 and 52-year-old and helped his team to the NHL playoffs. Gordie Howe is Mr. Hockey for a lot of good reasons, but longevity is one of them. Remarkable stuff that he'd be playing that long and at that age, 52. And he was born just outside of my boyhood home of Saskatoon in the town of Floral, Saskatchewan. And so we give flowers of praise to Gordie Howe today, Mr. Hockey.
That was perfectly timed to the anthem.
That was perfect.
That was amazing.
That was perfect.
Do you have an earpiece in? You don't have an earpiece?
I do.
You do? Okay, you could hear the anthem. I couldn't see it. It was on the other side. I was like,
I
heard
it fade away. Yeah.
Wow, that was beautiful.
The only thing that would have made that better is if you had done the A Cool Thing About Canada as Ron Burgundy.
I think it's
who isn't Canadian?
Yeah, no, I think fans probably had enough
You were
of
the
that.
Canadian Ron Burgundy. Yeah,
when in Rome.
When in Rome. Greg, we appreciate the time, man. We'll look forward to the game on BYU Radio tonight.
Yeah, it's a great night. We got basketball in the air tonight. I'm excited about it.